0 o'clock, Formula One is thinking about making new rules for their races. Most of these new rules are about sprint races and adding more races to the schedule. The people who organize Formula One want to make the sport more exciting and fun to watch, but the drivers don't really like these ideas. Now, we might see more sprint races. They're thinking about making the fastest cars start the back, and there could be more than 25 races each year starting in 2026. With all these changes, will they make the sport better or worse to watch? We know that the new changes that Stefano Domenicali talked about will make a lot of fans upset. But I also know the drivers won't be happy either, especially Max Verstappen. The three-time world champion likes that they separated the sprint race from regular qualifying, but he really doesn't want more sprint races in the future. He thinks there's no reason to add more. But Domenicali wants to have 8 sprint races in a season, which is 2 more than we have now. That means 16 more points that drivers can win. And when the racing is really close like it is now, you can see how this change could really mix up who wins and who loses. Talking more about this change, Domenicali said he thinks the change they made this year is good for many reasons. With separate qualifying and regular qualifying, everything flows much better now. He said they're not going to be like MotoGP where almost every race is a sprint race, but there's room to grow. Maybe 1/3 of all races could be sprint races. But the big question isn't really about adding 2 more sprint races. After all, lots of new fans came from watching the Netflix show Drive to Survive, and they love the drama and fighting in the sport, not just the old-school serious racing. If that's what fans want, then that's what they should get. The real question is about reverse grids, which Domenicali has also talked about. It looks like we might see something that Formula 2 already does during their sprint races. It's pretty questionable to add a rule like this in a really competitive sport like Formula 1. Here's why. Passing other cars is much harder now, and the fastest driver on Friday would get punished by being moved back to 10th or 8th place and having to fight their way up just to get a few more points in the sprint race. On the other hand, a driver who finishes 10th in qualifying would get moved up to first place. If nothing crazy happens in their 100 kilometers race, they'll get 10 points from the sprint race or 8 points depending on how many drivers get points. That's the same as finishing 6th in a regular race. Imagine how much this would help drivers from slower teams or teams that usually struggle to finish in the top 10 on Sunday. Hamilton talked about this not too long ago. He said that while he really likes the idea of reverse grids, he knows that lots of drivers would go slow on purpose just so they could start the sprint race in first place. Hamilton said more about this. Saturday isn't the best day, but he likes having just one practice session before qualifying. He thinks they can learn from this, and he loves that they have a different format instead of just the same 3 practice sessions and then the race. The best sprint race he ever had was when he started last in 2021 in Brazil, so he likes the reverse order idea. But he said if they had that rule, then everyone would just try to qualify last on purpose. This was before the sprint qualifying was separated from regular qualifying, but Domenicali still really likes this rule and talked about it more. The F1 boss thinks there won't be any sneaky tricks used by teams because if they follow the same pattern that Formula 2 uses now, if a driver finishes 10th on Friday, then he starts 10th on Sunday. That would hurt his main race much more than he might think. So risking a bad race just to win a sprint race might not be worth it for the fastest drivers. But like I said earlier, it would make a lot of sense for drivers who are in the middle of the pack or fighting for just a few points. When talking more about reverse grids, Domenicali said personally, he would say why not try reverse grids? There's lots of action, lots of passing, and you're fighting for points. Some people might say it's a fake way of racing, but there's nothing fake about what you think is the right way to make great action. So he would be interested in talking about that again. But the changes aren't just about the races, they're also about the schedule. From what Domenicali has been saying, it sounds like we're very close to racing in Africa. The last time Formula One went to Africa was in 1993. Hamilton has said he wants to race on that continent before he retires. But there are certain costs that come with what the sport wants to do now. which is add a new race as early as 2026. The main cost is that legendary racetracks might have to be removed from the schedule. People are already worried about tracks like Spa-Monza, Suzuka, or Zandvoort because lots of other cities around the world want to host street races for F1. This is a worrying trend that keeps growing in the sport right now. Rwanda is in serious talks to have a race on the schedule as early as 2026. Dominicali said the most important thing for him is that the country and continent they go to should feel like they really welcome the sport and the fans, which is now true for almost every country they visit. Dominicali said more. They want to go to Africa, but they need the right investment and plan. Rwanda is a serious option. They've shown a good plan, and actually, they have a meeting with them at the end of September. It will be on a permanent track. With 24 races, he sees that as a number that will stay the same, and they can really work on the ones they're discussing to see what the future will look like. He doesn't see big changes coming soon, but in the next few months they need to talk about what 2026, 2027, and 2028 will look like. They have different options, but they're in a good place. Besides Rwanda, Formula One had lots of talks with Thailand. Bangkok, the capital city, is now willing to redesign the original layout of the circuit. It was supposed to be a street circuit, just so it could make fans all over the world happy, as well as the drivers. But with Madrid coming in 2026 and Barcelona already in big trouble of being removed, the question is whether we'll be racing at 24 or 25 places in 2026. So if there's another circuit added, then we'll very likely see drivers like Alonso retire earlier or drivers like Verstappen being pushed to race in other racing series. They've shared their thoughts on what they would do if the calendar kept growing in this very unhealthy and probably not sustainable way. All of these changes are very interesting to talk about, that's for sure, and they're being discussed in F1 circles. But what's worth mentioning is that the sport should keep its own principles and should never give them up for any amount of money or fancy sponsorships. But looking at how the last couple of years have gone, it seems like maybe that ship sailed a long time ago. Now we're watching how the sport organizers are trying to do anything they can to bring in more money and bigger revenue to the championship. This is hurting the drivers' wishes to stay at their teams for a longer time, although it's increasing their salary and letting teams get bigger financial help from new companies and investors in the sport. I guess this further proves our point, that not everything revolves around the money factor in Formula One. With all this in mind, do you think the new changes will add more quality to the sport? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and once you've done that, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.